All right, everybody, welcome back to the showcast as we head into our interview for this week. Now, we're always excited to talk to our guests, but this guest holds a very special place in our hearts as he was a huge part of our childhoods. I know at least mine. I'm pretty sure, Adam, he was a big part of yours, too.
Yes.
A few months back, we had at Great Philadelphia Comic Con, we had the opportunity to meet and speak to this gentleman, and he couldn't have been a nicer guy. So, of course, we said we've got to get him on the podcast. We got to get him on the show. Well, the time is finally happening. The time is finally here. You would know him best as the lovable mailman, Mr. McFeely, on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Please welcome to the program, Mr. David Newell. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm glad I could do it. Speedy delivery. It took us a few weeks to get a schedule worked out, but here we are.
Yeah. I got to start by saying, too, you say the speedy delivery, and it gives me, it makes my heart flutter, because it just, it brings back so many memories of watching that show when I was younger, just to hear you say it.
That's so many people say that, and I say it's sort of second nature now, but so many people say, "Oh, just say it once, just say it once," and it's been, and I think over the years we used it as sort of an all-purpose greeting or goodbye or how are you or good day, whatever. Speedy delivery can mean many different things. But, how it all came to be, how Speedy Delivery came to be, is that on the first taping we did, the first show, this is back in 1967, we started taping in black and white, about 4 months in advance before we went on the air, and so we had a backlog. And so I made the delivery to Fred Rogers, and it was an armadillo. Why an armadillo? I can't remember now, but that's what it was. And as I left, I said, well, I've got to get back to the zoo or wherever I brought the armadillo from, and said, well, speedy delivery. And Fred said, speedy delivery, Mr. McFeely, and it sort of stuck. And every time I came or left his house, I would say speedy delivery. And it became, I guess, a famous catchphrase. A lot of people use it.
Yeah, it's almost like aloha in Hawaii.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's it, or shalom.
Yeah, it means hello and goodbye at the same time.
Yeah, it does it, and good day or whatever. So yes, and even sort of a warm greeting. And Fred and I would use it a lot. Just when he would call the house about something we had to do the next day or something I had to get or whatever, and he would say speedy delivery, So it's a part of my life now. I use it in everyday conversation.
Yeah, I can only imagine how many times those words have been spoken by you.
I could not count. After almost 1967 till still, I'm still doing appearances. So, how many years is that? That's
It's like almost 50.
Multiplied by thousands of times. So anyhow, yes.
Yeah.
But it's every speedy delivery has meant something to me. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. I'm still working as Mr. McFeely. I do a lot of events like the Comic-Con. But I do, just recently I did an event in Western Pennsylvania where there's a big Westmoreland County Arts Festival, and I was there. And so many people who, of your guys' age, came up to me and said how much the program meant to them as they were growing up. And I hear so many different stories. In fact, I'm trying to put together a book called Speedy Delivery of my years working with Fred Rogers. And it's not easier said than done. There's a documentary, I don't know if you've ever seen it, called Speedy Delivery that's out now.
Yeah, you had mentioned that to us when we were at the con, and unfortunately we haven't had an opportunity to see it yet. I really do want to, because I've seen clips and I've seen the trailer on YouTube and things like that, but I really do want to see that documentary.
Well, if your listeners want to ever get a copy of it or watch it, I know there's a web for it. It's called speedydeliverymovie.com, all run together, speedydeliverymovie.com. .com, and you can, I think, buy a copy there or at least see a preview of it. So that's a source. And then I think a lot of libraries have it. PBS showed it some years back too, so a lot of people maybe have made copies of it themselves. But in that, there's a lot of interviews with people I've worked with, and there's one of Fred Rogers' wife and my wife and my two sons. My daughter was not living in Pittsburgh at the time, and so she's not in it, but the two sons are. So it was a lot of fun to make, and the person who made it now is living in Los Angeles and working for. He was working for Pop Sugar for a while. I think he's doing some a similar show now too, but he grew up with it too. His name is Paul Germain, and he was in Pittsburgh working on a postdoctorate and met me somewhere at a mall and said, "I'd like to do a documentary on you as a project." I said, "Well, fine." And I didn't hear from him for about 6 months, and one day he showed up and said, "Well, I'm ready to begin." So he did. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think I read somewhere too. I think the documentary only had a budget of what, like $4,000.
Yeah, 4,000 or 5,000, and he got a couple more thousand from Carnegie Mellon University, where he was working on his postdoctorate. Yeah, and he put together this wonderful. It really did a good job. He had some friends who all worked in the business, and one of them, I remember recording part of it at a studio in Los Angeles where a friend of his worked, and during the lunch hour when they weren't using a recording studio, we recorded our dialogue for, the director's cut, when you talk about, how they sit down and say, now today, they show the documentary again, and then they talk over it. Mm-hmm. We recorded that in L.A. and parts of it in Maryland when I was visiting a children's museum, and so it was a lot of fun. It brought back a lot of memories too.
Yeah. I want to go back to the beginning a little bit. Obviously, if Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you said you started filming back in like 1967.
That's right.
How did the character of Mr. McFeely come to be?
Well, let's see. Well, actually, the name was not McFeely during the first script that I received. I met Fred in the early fall of 1967. Well, I'll tell you how it all began. Is I was in Europe the summer of 1967. I had a cousin who was in the Navy, and I went over to visit him. He was in London, and then I met a friend of mine who was there studying, and we met and traveled a little bit. And I got a telegram from a mutual friend of Fred Rogers and mine. I didn't know Fred, but I knew of him. And to make a long story short, I got the telegram. There were no cell phones or computers then, yeah. So I went to the American Express office, got this telegram saying that Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was going to go national. It was just a regional program at the time. And now I'll cut this short. And he set up an interview with me for a possible job on the program. And I came back to the States and met Fred, and I talked to him for about an hour, and he said he gave me the job. It was that quick, and I was the last one he interviewed. Wow. And he said, "Well, we're going to start taping in about 3 weeks, and here's the scripts." And my job was production assistant. I was to be in charge of all of the props and costumes and be his assistant, really. And he said, "Oh, I'd like you to do this part of the delivery man I'm writing in, and his name's going to be Mr. McCurdy." That was the name. And it's in the script, the first couple scripts, that McCurdy, and it was that until we started. The first day we were going to tape, I was all set. I got all the props ready, and I was in my costume ready for the tape, and the phone rang. And Fred was called to an office, and it was Sears Roebuck's Foundation calling, saying, first day of taping, they were underwriting it, or part of it, and they were saying to call to say, good luck on your first day of taping. We love the concept, the script, etc., etc. However, please don't call the delivery man Mr. McCurdy, because Fred wrote his own scripts, and the Sears gave the money, and the man's name who decided this at Sears was McCurdy, and Fred was basically saying, thank you, thank you, Mr. McCurdy. Yeah. And they said it's a little too self-serving, they thought. So maybe you could change that. And Fred said, well, okay, well, and he came in the studio. I knew something was up, and he said, well, but now your name is going to be McFeely. That's it, McFeely, because his middle name is McFeely, and his grandfather's name is McFeely, so he was calling me in honor of his his grandfather. So that's how McFeely came about. It was really literally 10 minutes before we began that he came up with the name, and so here I am, Mr. McFeely.
Yeah, so many years later, and the name is still
yes,
still
and
there.
his that was his mother's father. Mr. McFeely, and it was, and the irony to all of this, the person who sent the telegram, whose name was Bob McCulley, he told me years later that his mailman at his street in Pittsburgh, believe it or not, his name was McFeely. How close is that? I said, you're kidding me. It can't be. And it was. It's a real name, and I've met some McFeelys over the years who've come up to me and say, "We're the McFeely family," and there they were standing in front of me, the McFeelys, and I was like, I would sign to the McFeely family for Mr. McFeely, etc. And then there's a teacher in one of the Pittsburgh schools here that every so often I'll run into somebody who had a Mr. McFeely for their English teacher. So anyhow, that's how it all began.
Oh. I know over the course of the show, over the run of the show, you saw so many great people come on to the set. Like Lou Ferrigno, Bill Nye, I think even Tony Bennett at one point.
Right, Tony Bennett.
All these great people visited Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I'm curious, what was it like for you working with these other people when they were on set? And do you have like a favorite out of any of those people that you met?
Oh, I do. You've seen Wizard of Oz, of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And in Wizard is the Wicked Witch of the West, Margaret Hamilton. That's the actress's name, Margaret Hamilton. And so many people have told me, even now, they said, when I was growing up, that witch scared me. I still have nightmares. And the flying monkeys, that got them. And the flying monkeys and the witch all together. And so I said, Fred, what we should do is invite Margaret Hamilton, the actress, to come on the program and talk about her role as the witch in Wizard of Oz. And he said, well, if you can locate her, I'll write a script around it. Talking about the scary thing is that was the sort of the theme of introducing Margaret Hamilton. And so I did. I located her and wrote a letter to her, and her agent responded back saying Margaret would love to come on the program. Her grandchildren watch the program. She watches with them. And she was a kindergarten teacher before she went into acting. And she said, I've had other people tell me about the witch scaring them, and I'd like to be helpful. And she came on as in her everyday clothes, but carrying the witch's costume and talking about it being pretend that she's an actress and that's her job, etc. And they showed pictures of her. We were trying to get a clip from Wizard of Oz. We could have, but it was like $4,000 a second to do it. And Fred felt, well, okay, our budget's not that high.
Yeah, back then, now that's a lot of money. Back then, that's got to be...
It was astronomical, yes. Yeah. And but I think there are a lot of people getting cuts out of it. I'm sure the Frank Baum estate and MGM and residuals and musicians and so forth. At any rate, we did use stills, black and white stills, and that was just as it worked fine. And then in the neighborhood of Make-Believe, she was in her witch's costume, or one that looked like it, and there was a story, and at the end she came back in her regular street clothes, and Fred talked about it, and she did her laugh, her cackle, and it really helped a lot of families. I remember being, and still to this day, people remember The Wicked Witch and how it scared them and how it helped. Not only that particular movie, but children don't separate fantasy and reality, very young kids. And Fred was helping him with that. And you know how Halloween costumes scare a lot of young children when they come to the door. A lot of kids are afraid who aren't going out yet, the 2-year-olds and maybe 3-year-olds. The Halloween scares them. And Fred dealt with that. It was really a lot of child development in the program. A lot of people don't realize, what young children go through. That was the purpose of the program, really, is to help children, preschool children, to everyday things that might be frightening or that might help them. Sibling rivalry, brothers and sisters who don't get along, and talking about jealousy, and it's such a human emotion. It's how you deal with it. And it's how you deal with your anger, and how you deal with being afraid, and how you deal with other people's feelings. And they were all part of the neighborhood, and it was a lot of child psychology used in the program. It wasn't just, let's turn it on and have a
puppet show. And
yeah, exactly. The puppets were symbols of a child's personality, very facets of a child's personality. Daniel Tiger was very shy, and X the Owl would love to learn, and Lady Elaine got into trouble a lot, and King Friday was authority figure, and things like that. It was all symbolic, a lot of it, but also a lot of fun too. That he kept the fun, but it was educational, but more emotional learning, I think, within the scripts that he wrote. He had an advisor, somebody who worked at the University of Pittsburgh, who had worked earlier with Dr. Spock and Eric Erikson, the psychologist. She was a woman who was an expert in children's play. If you watch children playing, young children, you can learn a lot about what they might be thinking about. If there's a child who's troubled, or it comes out in their play in some way, and if you're trained to see the signals, you might be able to help that child. So a lot of that was used in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood that I don't think a lot of people saw, but in some ways children picked up on it. Yeah. They couldn't articulate it, I don't think, but they could pick up on it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it was definitely deeper than it kind of appeared on the surface, and I think that's why I was around for so long, and that's why you even see a show like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. I think that's been around already for like 4 years or so, which my son, he's only 19 months, but he absolutely loves that show. And with kids being the sponges they are, having a show like that to kind of teach them those kind of lessons now, I think is very important for child development. Did you get involved with, I know you don't do the voice of Mr. McFeely on Daniel Tiger, but did you get to get involved at all with that show?
Yeah, at the very beginning, we all, in fact, I work at home. I work mainly on the neighborhood, and then on the public relations of the neighborhood, and on the beginnings of Daniel. When Fred died, we had, the neighborhood, of course, was still on, and we were servicing the neighborhood and kept it going, and still did public relations and PR on it. But at the same time, we were trying to come up with brainstorming to come up with another program. And we worked, before Daniel started, we were working on taking elements of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like the song that he wrote, "What Do You Do With the Mad That You Feel?" which is about anger management, and we created some lesson plans for teachers to use with children in their classes who may be acting out. So we're taking elements of the neighborhood and working on that as we were trying to work on a new program. And that's how it evolved. So I was working on the early parts of Daniel, and now I do mainly. I work from home mainly, but I do a lot of visits to festivals and because it's still being seen. You know, it's on Netflix, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, as well
and
as
Amazon.
Amazon. Yeah. And also on PBS Kids on the weekends. A lot of stations show it on the weekends. So basically, you can see it almost anytime you want to, as opposed to waiting for being. And I think that's what you guys experienced. It was more for you. It was more of a destination show. It was on every day, maybe after school or 5 o'clock, and you would wait to see it. Now, on any television show, you can see it almost when you want to. You know, if you want to get up at 4 in the morning and watch Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you can. You know, by finding it on Amazon. So it's a different dynamic now, and I think kids react differently now to it, and there's a different impact that it has on kids. Maybe they take television now more for granted, whereas you guys, it was more special, I think, to you to see it sort of parceled out only when it was broadcast. Am I making sense? You know, it's just a different way that, and I think that's the impact it had on a lot of the people I met at the Comic-Con. It was a special time in their day where they could sit down and watch the neighborhood. A lot of program managers of public stations across the country would do it at lunchtime, schedule it at lunchtime, and we get more thank yous for that. And then again at 5 o'clock, when families were getting ready for dinner, it was a different time then.
Yeah.
But it still, I think, has the same impact on children whenever they watch it today. You know, it does have a message, and I think kids get that message. But there's so much coming at them now. You know, there's so many programs out there you can watch. But if people are introduced to it, if children are introduced to it, I think they'll appreciate it.
Yeah. I know you've made mention before, not in this interview, but in other interviews you've done, how, you know, you were really, really close friends with Fred Rogers, and almost to the point where he was a mentor of yours. I know back in 1997, I believe it was, he was given the Lifetime Achievement at the Emmy Awards.
Right.
I'm curious, you know, being as close as you were to him and being a mentor of yours as he was and working with him for so long, you know, what was your reaction to that? Like, what did that have a special meaning to you as well when that happened?
Oh, it did. We worked at it. You had to get, there were some people, some producers in Los Angeles who belonged to the Academy. And I think every year when the Lifetime Achievement is given, it has there must be a panel, or you have to make nominations. And the nominations come from within the industry. And so the person who was responsible for a lot of those, for getting Fred's name in the mix, so to speak, called me and said, they did it. They're going to give Fred the Lifetime Achievement this year on the broadcast. And the broadcast that year happened to be from Radio City Music Hall. And so I was with him, along with our producer, we and Fred's wife. And they were sitting in the first row of the music hall, and we were back a little bit. And it was quite something to see the impact that Fred had that evening on all these people who were big names in television. Gave him a standing ovation. And Tim Robbins, the actor, introduced him. And he was a big fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I remember he was in Pittsburgh making a film in the same studio where we taped at a different time, but at the same time he was making this film on location, and you did some scenes in the studio, and he was so thrilled to find out that that's where they made The Neighborhood. And then his wife at the time, or not his wife, his partner at the time, Susan Sarandon, was in town making Lorenzo's Oil, and she brought their children in to meet Fred. So my point being that Tim Robbins, they wanted someone to introduce, and he said, "What about Tim Robbins?" And so that's why he did it. But that evening was very special, and I remember we were backstage. He had to go up to makeup in the music hall. If you're ever backstage the music hall, it's incredible.
I can imagine.
They have these huge elevators that take the scenery, and so they said, "Well, okay, we'll take you down on the elevator," and we heard some footsteps running to catch the elevator. It was about 10 Rockettes who were going on the elevator with us because they were opening the show. But it was quite something. And then the next award from the Academy was the introduction in the Television Hall of Fame, which was done in Hollywood, and that was about 5 years later. And they inducted him into the Hall of Fame, and that was quite an event. If you ever get a chance to see that, I think it's on YouTube. It's called, there are two. There's one, the Lifetime Achievement is one.
Which, that's the one I watched.
Yes, and then he spoke there, but then there's another one called the Induction to Television Hall of Fame, which has, they induct about 5-6 people a year, and it's from all the trades, not just actors and performers, it's makeup artists and agents and so forth. And so the night that he was inducted, the Mary Tyler Moore group was inducted, and there were so many people, but Fred spoke for about maybe 4 minutes after his presentation of his award, and it's a wonderful speech. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's on. It's called Television Hall of Fame, and that was about 1998, 99, 2000, something like that.
Okay,
so if you get a chance, your viewers would like it too, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to link it too.
Pardon
we can link it. We can link it and share it on our Facebook page too.
Oh, you could do that. Yes, there are a lot of things that are up. I noticed you can just Google. I've seen there's some promos I did for public television stations and a sweater drive that we did 4 or 5 years ago that's still up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that's up there, but that happens to be one of my favorites, or two of my favorites, the induction and the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, the internet is truly a wonderful thing.
It is wonderful, and it can be awful too.
Oh yeah,
it's how you use it. That's
true.
exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly how Fred thought about television. He saw television in the early days. This is the early 50s, when they were just stringing together cartoons and slapstick comedies together and having them interrupted by the local news guy or the sports guy who was assigned to do the kiddie show. And Fred said, we can do better than that. We can, nothing wrong with cartoons and slapstick. It's just, it's a steady diet. Let's do something that really can help children rather than just use it to sell cornflakes. And that's what he did. He left NBC. That's where he was, at NBC, working as a floor manager in a director's program. He was going to be a director and producer. And he saw what was happening in children's television, which he didn't think was very good. And he said, I want to try my hand at that, and left NBC. And people said, you're crazy. Well, don't do that. You're on your way to fame and fortune, so to speak. And he said, no, I like to go to Pittsburgh, where the first public station was going on the air in 1954. And his was the first program called The Children's Corner. And that was on the air for about 7 years, live hour a day he did. So even before Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood began, he had 7 years of television under his belt. So it was a rehearsal for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So
Yeah.
he had a lot of experience dealing with television, and he used it so differently. He used it as a very intimate meeting between his television friends, and he always said the space between that television screen and the viewer is holy ground, he would call it. And he said whatever you put on there, especially for children, should be something that's positive and wholesome for that age group. And he did.
Yeah, he definitely accomplished that. I mean, TV, internet, they've both come a long way. Another thing, and another aspect, kind of the way we met you, these Comic Cons and conventions that have really sort of expanded and exploded over the last several years. Do you get to do a lot of those conventions? I know you also find yourself out at some PBS events too.
Yeah, I've done a lot. I've been to every State of the Union now several times, doing the conventions and not the conventions, but an event at a public television station.
Yeah, what's that experience been like? I mean, especially.
It's been wonderful. I mean, sometimes the station will have an open house, and they'll invite families into the studio as part of their local celebration. And then another time, a station will open a new public station. They'll move, and invariably, I will meet parents and grandparents who have grown up with the program, and the stories I've heard and from over these many years, and they're all usually very positive. There are some who say, "Well, why did you ever do that?" It's planted a seed in. We did. I'll be specific. We did a program about a week on divorce. The most requested topic we ever had from viewers and people who wrote in said, "Could you help our family with this trauma of divorce?" We had a lot of letters like that, and so Fred never did write it. It took him 5 years to think about it, and he finally wrote a week about how to deal with it and how to talk to children about it and how it should be approached. And he had a lot of advice. Anyhow, it was a very good week. It started off by a parent special on Sunday evening, and then the next week would be the program for children. Anyhow, we get some letters saying, "Oh, now why did you ever do that?" Or now my son thinks it's going to happen in our family. And I guess, that's a chance you take. But I guess that family, maybe if it ever happened, they could use the advice.
And if they're lucky enough for it not to, I mean, there's always that family who does have it happen, and you might not see the letter, but it's affected them in a positive way.
And then, for instance, the Margaret Hamilton segment, I remember a woman coming up to us when we were in Los Angeles doing an event, and she said, "Oh, thank you for the Margaret Hamilton episode, because it really helped me explain scary events and monster types and monster under the bed to my 3-year-old." Again, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was designed specifically for preschoolers and I guess spilling over into the early elementary years. But then Fred said, we've done our job if a 10-year-old doesn't watch anymore, because it was specific to that age group.
Yeah.
But what Fred really liked about his role in this creation of this series was the writing of it. He liked the creating, especially the music. He wrote his own music and songs. That was his favorite part. Being the host he never did it to be famous. That came with the territory. He never liked the adulation that he got, and he didn't like being a public person. That's not why he went into television. He wanted to do it, take this medium, and use it for the good, which he did. But he paid the price of couldn't go. Then he couldn't go anywhere, and he couldn't go anywhere. And the airports were hard to go through, maneuver, because everybody knew who he was, even adults. It wasn't just children into him, but adults too. So he made quite a impact on children's television, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of people have, and the parodies that came out.
I was going to mention them too, and I didn't know if I should.
I get it all the time. They say, "What did Mr. Rogers think of Eddie Murphy?"
That's the one I was thinking of too.
And well, I'll tell you, they did it without, they called it Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood,
Yeah.
So they didn't have to get permission. It's not called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, I guess. And you're a public figure, and public figures can be satirized. So he did it, and then I start getting calls from the producer of the show, not Lorne Michaels. This happened when they first created it was during another producer's term. I think Lorne Michaels wasn't there for about 4 years. At any rate, it happened during that point of, I can't remember the producer's name now, but anyhow, he would call himself and say, "Do you think that Fred Rogers would come on our program during one of Eddie's sketches and surprise Eddie? There'd be a knock at the door, and Eddie wouldn't be told, and he'd open the door, and there'd be Fred Rogers." And I would ask Fred, and they'd call every week, every Monday before they started writing new segments, he'd call. And I finally said, "Fred, I think they think I'm not telling you. Do you think the next time we're in New York, they ask if you would stop in and meet Eddie?" And so we did. We went, and Fred had never seen one of them, but they showed him a couple, and he thought they were affectionate spoofs. He didn't think they were mean-spirited. I didn't think they were mean. They were raunchy.
Yeah.
But they weren't mean, and Fred saw that aspect of it. And Eddie this is when he was just on his rise, and so he didn't do it. We went back again and talked with him again, and Fred never did do it, but I think it would have worked.
Oh, that would have been brilliant.
Yeah.
I think, what would have, they couldn't have gone much beyond, they could have opened with Eddie coming in and doing his opening, and then maybe there would be a knock at the door, and that would be Fred, and it would surprise Eddie. Would bring the house down. They would reaction.
Oh, yeah.
But they then could have both sung Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood and then go to commercial.
Yeah.
It would have worked that way, I think. But Fred never did do it. He's done some other... Oh, he did... the only time he ever appeared as a guest on a program that wasn't that he played another character was in Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Do you remember that show?
I do. Yeah.
And the producer of that program, who wrote her own, Beth Sullivan was her name, and she was a big fan of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and called one day and said, "Do you think Fred Rogers would ever play a cameo on our program of a minister coming to help the minister of that little town where Dr. Quinn took place?" And I said, Fred's not an actor. I don't think he'd want to do that. And so I asked him, and thinking he wouldn't do that. He said, "Yes, I'll do that. I'd like that program." And he did. So we spent a day at the Paramount Ranch. I was an extra in it, and Fred had about 7 lines. He was on screen maybe for 10 minutes all told. And if you ever see a rerun, it's on. It's still, they rerun Dr. Quinn on one of the cable channels, and it's every so often it's on. But he did that, and he loved doing that. And there was another time. Oh, the other time that I didn't think he would say yes, but did. There was the 75th anniversary of the NHL, National Hockey League, had their 75th anniversary. This is going back 20 years, I guess. And every team in the league was to pick an honorary captain. Whoever, it was Michael J. Fox in one city, and I forget who in another, but the Pittsburgh Penguins wanted Fred as their honorary captain. And I thought, oh, he'll never do this. And he did.
Oh. That's pretty awesome.
And he skated out, no less. He could skate, and at halftime, they made the award and brought him out. He skated out. They gave him the official jacket, and it was standing ovation. And in some cities, the host, the honorary awardee, couldn't skate, so they put a carpet down and he walked out. But Fred skated out.
We had so cool.
We had Peggy Fleming on the show too. She was in town for one of the ice capades, and she was a big fan. And Fred skated with her, and there was a little segment about, and that got into not just because she was famous or an Olympic winner. It was the practice of doing something. If you want to learn how to skate, ride a bike, swim, or whatever, play a musical instrument, you just don't do it magically. You have to practice at it, and it takes time. And that was the lesson that he wanted to get across. It doesn't magically happen. If you want to do it, you've got to do it. You've got to practice at it. Everything had a meaning, and as well as being entertaining. You know, she was a lovely person, and so he skated around the rink with her, and we were under the gun because we did this between, I guess, two shows that she was doing, and the next show was they had to open the arena at 7:00, and it was 6:45, and we still had one more segment to go, and we got it done. We got it done, and that's on too. So it's been wonderful, all of these different segments. And I'm sitting in my office here at home, and we mentioned Tony Bennett, and I'm looking at a picture right now of Lady Elaine Fairchild. It's a charcoal that I have framed, and it says Benedetto, that's his name. And he came on the program and sang a song, but as he was doing that, he was doing a portrait of Lady Elaine Fairchild, sketching it in chalk. And he did two, one for the rehearsal and one for the take. And I have one of the two. I have it framed here, sitting. So
that's awesome.
And I have a picture of me that was drawn by Maury Turner, who he did a cartoon strip called We Pals. He's since passed away, but this was syndicated for years and years. He was a black the first animator or cartoonist, did a strip, who was black, and he was a wonderful person, and Fred wanted to show all types, a diversity in the world, people doing everything that people can do, the possibilities that exist out there. That too was, he was on just talking about cartoons, but the underneath part of that is, here you are, anybody, you can do, there are possibilities in this life. Mm-hmm. And there's a smorgasbord out there, and Fred wanted to show that smorgasbord of possibilities for children. And you do it not by saying you're doing it, but just by doing it and let them pick it up. Do I have time to tell you what Fred learned at one of his when he was studying child development? This is, I think, how Fred, how the program, how he used the program. When he was studying child development, he would observe this particular class during the semester at the University of Pittsburgh, and each week there would be one of the parents of the children who would come in and show the class what that parent did for a living. You know, there was a cook one time came in, and there was a carpenter, things like that. And then there was a sculptor who came in to the classroom, bought a big chunk of modeling clay and put it down on the table in front of the kids, and they were all around the table and didn't say much, just started to go into the clay and make a simple figure of some sort. And the children followed suit, and for months afterwards, they said the artwork that those children turned out was just wonderful. But Fred would say there's a saying, a Quaker saying, of attitudes are caught, not taught. And if you love doing something in front of children that you love, and this artist certainly loved what he was doing, the children caught his enthusiasm, and they learned by that example. They then, in turn, made their own figurine or sculpture or whatever in their own way. And I think that's how Fred used the program, too. He would do things like showing the artist, like showing a singer, a dancer, a telephone repair person, loving what they were doing. It was very obvious, and children would catch that. In fact, there's a cellist whose name is Esperanza Spalding. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's quite something. She must be 28 now. And she plays classical, but she plays jazz, and she does solo concerts. And Esperanza is her first name. Spalding is the second name. If you ever have a chance to see her in concert, she's wonderful. She has said in interviews that she learned to love the cello because of watching Yo-Yo Ma on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. She said that in so many different interviews. And he is another person. Yo-Yo Ma we've had him on 3 or 4 times, and he was a good friend of Fred's. He's a wonderful person beyond being a superb musician. And, you know, you can see him playing on the Neighborhood, and Fred sitting there watching him, and you can tell the man loves what he's doing. And if children, they don't have to be another Yo-Yo Ma, but they could love his appreciation of music.
Right.
That's what Fred was hoping that they would do. Not that everybody's going to turn into Yo-Yo Ma. That's not his goal. It was to have people appreciate and love something that they're observing. You know, not everybody loves everything, but you know, that's why he showed so many different possibilities.
Yeah.
I hope I'm done. You've opened me up here and bringing back all of these.
No, it's fine. I mean, quite honestly, I mean, you mentioned earlier that, you know, you're going to work on a book, and I really hope you do, because, I mean, the stories that you have, I mean, we could talk to you probably for hours.
Yeah, we definitely will have to, at some point, have you back, because I could just listen to all your stories for hours.
I'd be glad to. Anytime you want to, we can do part 2 sometime. But I hope
absolutely.
I hope your listeners. The one thing that I hope this interview does is that your listeners who may not have seen or realized the depth of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it had a depth to it that was more than just a kiddie show.
Yeah.
You know,
I think going back is that, like, having a kid now, going back and watching it with him, that's kind of shown me that you don't really notice it when you're young because you don't necessarily remember it, but when you go back and watch it as an adult, you do actually kind of see that. But
also, you're watching it. However, you did pick something up, but you didn't realize you were doing it. It was subliminal, I guess.
Exactly.
But that's in a way, that's what Fred wanted to do, is just introduce children to positive, and also the relationships between people. Everything on the program, there were people who who were angry at each other. And that's the other thing he dealt with, this angry. He wrote a song called "What Do You Do with the Mad That You Feel When You Feel So Mad That You Could Bite?" And those words were what a child said to Fred once. And Fred took those exact words. He was asking Fred a question. I get so mad I could bite, probably his brother or sister or somebody in the class. And Fred would write the song hoping that to teach children alternate ways of expressing your feelings, nothing wrong with being angry. That's a human emotion, but it's how you deal with it.
Yeah.
And that's what Fred, through different ways of showing that. In fact, that we went to Stomp, the performance group Stomp.
Yeah.
We went to their show in New York and watched. They did a special segment for us before the show started, and taped that, and it all worked into Angry Feelings because they would bang on drums. They'd use different objects to make sounds. You ever see that group? But it tours, still touring. Try to see it because it's an excellent, just very creative.
I've seen a number of their specials, and I love. I was a musician growing up, so I love stuff like that.
So you'd appreciate. Well, Fred was a musician too. He played the piano, and that was his instrument. And I think the clarinet he played too. But piano was his. He loved the piano. He could do it. He could play by ear. And Johnny Costa was our musical director, and he could play by ear. And the two of them, no piano tuner could get away with anything. They could hear one note. They could hear. I'll tell you. I know we have to wrap up here, but when we were making a recording, Fred would record the songs for albums and then eventually CDs, and we recorded it. And Fred listened to a playback, and there was a note that one of the musicians played that wasn't quite right. I didn't notice it. No one, and they played it back for Fred, and he said everything's fine except that one note after whatever. He knew where it was, and they fixed it. They were able to go back and change the note. He could tell. He was a perfectionist in that way. And then one more thing. One year he went with a lot of other producers to India to create for 3 weeks a program, sort of a pilot program for Indian children for their Indian television. And they got together, and all these producers from the U.S. and I think England and some other countries got together and made this pilot program, and they wrote it, and the last thing was to tape it. So they were in the studio taping the program, and something didn't work. There was a cue, like a bell didn't ring or something, and they had to stop tape, and one of the technicians said, "Oh, it's just a children's program," and Fred said, "That's my point. It's a children's program. We have to do our best that we can do for children. It's not just a children's program. It's a very important program for children, and let's do it right."
Yeah.
So that was Fred, and he wanted to do the best he could for children. Not only and more in the content. That's what he was concerned about, the content in the program.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's what I hope your listeners get out of all of this.
Well, if they're anything like us, I can tell you, David, you can't really see it, but just talking to you, I've had a huge smile on my face, like just listening to your stories, and I'm sure you have so many others.
Oh, I do.
And we will absolutely have to have you back on just to talk more.
Well, anytime you let me know, and you know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
I'm in Pittsburgh for your listeners, and if you ever want to give out, if anybody ever needs an autograph, let me just give you the email.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's simply D, like in David, D Newell, Newell, 1956 @gmail.com. You must have that, right?
Yeah, we can put that in the description too. This way,
and also you can give there's a website for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and a store where they can buy.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know actually your autographed picture from the Comic-Con we met you at is actually hanging up on our fridge, and it will remain there for quite some time.
So you have the information.
Yeah.
Well, it was nice meeting you again over the phone. And hello to all of your listeners, and speedy delivery to them. And tell them where they can see Mr. Rogers. It's still out there, so tell them to introduce it to their children and their grandchildren and nieces and nephews.
Absolutely. Well, it's a timeless show at this point, so it's
it is. It's like Wizard of Oz in a way.
Yeah.
That's timeless. Yeah. It really is.
But David, this has been an absolute pleasure. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. And now I'm
going to count to 3, and we're all going to say speedy delivery, even the listeners. Now, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Speedy delivery. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Stick around, guys. We'll be back with more Showcast right after this.